Hola. Dedicate this video to Liam, meu filho. Trying to teach him some music. Anybody else interested? Today I want to talk about the cadence. Fancy term meaning the movement from the dominant to the one, which is gives you a sense of like a final arrival. 90% of the time it's going to be a 5 chord, the dominant back to the tonic, a 5-1 cadence. But songs can end on the 5, the 1 to a 5. It's called a half cadence. Less common, but still can be used. It's change things up. You end on the 5th instead of the tonic. But 90% of the time, the song is going to end from a dominant to the tonic. Starts on the 1, goes through different chords, leads to the dominant, and the dominant leads you back to, resolves to the tonic, the 1. So in the key of C, the 1, C is your tonic, and the 5th, G is your dominant. G, B, D. You can add the 7th, F, dominant 7th chord, and C, E, G. Here you're showing 2 notes of the root of the chord, how to resolve it. For example, the first example is the 5th of G resolves to the 1, C. So the bass can have bigger skips. It skips down from the 5th, skips all the way down to the 1, to the stable consonant sense of arrival. That's your bass note. The soprano note is a 2 that resolves down a step to the 1, your octave, with the 8th, your octave. So we put it together. Those are the outer voicings, your bass and your soprano. G in the bass, D in the soprano, which is your root and 5th of G major, down to the C in the bass and C in your octave, the 8th. So those are 2 unstable notes. G is stable in G major as a 5th, but G is stable in C major as a 5th, but G is unstable in G major as a root, and D is unstable as a 2nd because it wants to resolve to a stable 1. So both those notes have a tendency to want to move back to the tonic, which is a more stable note. The most stable is your root, 5th, octave, 3rd, the 6th, the A. So let's play that again, a little louder. Gives you a sense of arrival. Tension. Release the tension. Resolution. So that's called a perfect, authentic cadence. When you move the soprano step by step down to the octave, and you drop from the G bass down the 5th to your root 1 octave, tonic. That's an authentic cadence. If you fill out the chord, so those are the rest of the voicings, G, B, D. You can leave out the 5th if you just played root, 3rd, C. Or you can even add just the root, 5th, C. Let's see what that sounds like. Those are more stable notes. C, G, C. But I like adding the 3rd because the 3rd is what tells you if it's a major chord or a minor chord. If it's a E flat. So I like adding the 3rd. fifth there, just by instinct. Let me try it. It's nice to add the G because it's a common tone in C, so you can add it either way. C, E, G, C. Second example is the fifth in the bass and your seventh on the top, the B. The B ascends up a step to your octave, the eighth. The G again descends down a fifth to C. So B is the third of G major. I'm playing it up here. So the seventh is moving up a step to your octave, the eighth. Here it'd be too close. But still the same basic idea. Okay, let's fill out those voicings. Playing G, D, B, which is your root, fifth, third, on top of G major. Playing C in a bass, E, G, C, which is your third, fifth octave. Let's listen to it again. Tension. Resolve. Perfect authentic cadence. You're still moving a step from your soprano voice. From B to C is just a step. And G down a fifth to the one is called the perfect authentic cadence. Okay, listen to them one more time. Gives you a sense of arrival. A more stable consonant. Perfect consonants, right? And imperfect consonants talked about. The next example is an imperfect authentic cadence with a G in the bass and G in your soprano. So it's going to be playing the root and the octave of G major, and your bass is descending down to C. But your sopranos, G is the common tone and C is a fifth, so it stays where it's at. So you're playing C in the bass, G as your soprano as the fifth of C major, C, E, G. Except playing a G up here. So it's a common tone in G and C, and it's just maintaining the same common tone. Gives you a sense of arrival, but it's a little bit weaker, so they call it imperfect authentic cadence. It's the G in the bass still gives you a sense of dropping down to the tonic, but the G is just maintaining that common tone. If you fill in the voicings, oh sorry, I moved to G. So I'm playing G, B, D. G in the top, then C, C, E, G. next example is G in the bass and D, your second, on the soprano, which is the fifth of G major. The soprano is moving up a step to the third, and your bass is dropping down to the fifth. The one. The root of C major. So you're playing C in the bass, and E, your third, as your soprano. I actually like this one. It's an imperfect cadence because you're not ending on the root, which is the most stable note. You're ending on the third, which is a little less stable. But it's still in C major. It still gives you a nice sound. A little bit more mellow. If you fill in the voicings, playing G, B, D, then I'm playing C, G, C, E. Root, fifth, octave, third. Back to G. I like this one. Yeah. The next one is the seventh in the bass, which is B. Seventh is B. Your third is G major, and D, your second on top, soprano. This one's interesting. Playing the third of G major and the fifth. Your soprano is going to move down to C, and your bass is going to move up to C. So B, D. You're resolving to the tonic and the octave C, which is stable, but because you're not dropping down from G to C, they call it an imperfect cadence, imperfect authentic cadence instead of a perfect authentic cadence, which is the G dropping down to C, giving you that sense of arrival. But it still sounds interesting. Remember, B is a leading tone, half step below your root, so it has a tendency to want to move up to C. And D, your second, is dissonant, also has a tendency to resolve to C, the octave, which is the 1 or the 8th. So let's listen to that again. Let's add the inner voicings. G. So I'm playing B, G, D, which is your third, your root, and your fifth of G major. And now I'm keeping G as a common tone, and I'm descending to your octave, and I'm ascending your bass. I'm not even adding the third, just to see what it sounds like. Your octave resolves a little bit better, stands out a little bit better. Let's see what it sounds like with the E. Yeah, sometimes when you add more notes, it gets muffled up a little bit. I think it sounds better without the E. These are your more stable notes, the C, G octave, your most stable perfect consonants, I think they call it. So without the third, it gives it more space for the notes to ring out. One more time. As opposed to the E. Sounds fuller. You can choose either one. It still works because without the C, it's still an implied C major chord. Next example, it is showing the half cadences where you're moving from C major, C E to G D. So you're moving from the tonic to the dominant. Mostly the same notes, just reverse. C to E. Oops. So a song would go from a C to a G, end on a G. Just to switch things up, the composers decided to end songs on the fifth, the dominant. So it's not always the same thing. You always anticipate the same familiar thing. So they make a twist and end the song in the dominant. Next example is the third in the bass, and your octave, C, and it resolves to the fifth on the bass and the seventh on the soprano. So C major, to G major, root third. So they're using an inversion. They're playing the third as C major. So I'm just filling out the voicings. Instead of just the bass and the soprano, I'm adding what you could call the tenor or the alto. Or you could spread out the voicings, E to B up here. Where am I? Here I am. Yeah, E to C. If you fill them out. So the third in the bass is C major, makes it a little less stable because you don't have that root in the bass. You have that third in the bass, which is a little bit imperfect consonants, or a little less stable. That's why it sounds a little weird. Yeah, sounds alright. The next example is the 1 and the 5th. 1 C G. Then bass moves up to G and soprano remains in G. Just like the other example except reversed. Yep, just repetitive. If you fill it out. This is how the common tone connects the chords, makes it a smooth transition. Next example is in a minor key, but it's out of voicing, so it doesn't show the third, the 5th, and the 7th, which we already did. Yeah, we already did this one. This is just in a minor key. It's showing the 5th and the 7th B, G major to a C. It's supposed to be a C minor, so you'd have to add the E flat in there for a C minor instead of a E natural. And your last example is the 5th and the 2nd. And I'm playing a C major instead of a C minor, even though it's an example for a minor key. But some songs in minor keys will end on a major chord just to switch things up. So you don't anticipate always the same thing, familiar thing. So that's basically the cadence of 5, dominant 5, resolving to the 1 tonic. And once you have that in your ear, you can resolve the 2nd to the octaves. Is perfect authentic cadence. And you can mix it up and use your voicings in whatever your ear thinks is the best sounding one. Alright, good luck, enjoy, and never give up.